Good afternoon, everyone. It's Carmen Studer coming to you with my very good longtime friend, Terrina Picarello. I've known her since we were in our 20s, and some of you will be familiar with her because you have seen her on the Michael Jaco show. She is not only a therapist, but she's a lover of humans, which makes me very, very happy to work with somebody like her and very, very blessed. When I think back to us in our 20s,
I know. We were like little baby grown-ups. We were like 24, 25, right?
yeah, we were young.
Little
I mean,
baby
I think
grown-ups.
younger, maybe 22.
Yeah, we were just little
Yeah.
starting. We were our little baby junior grown-ups.
Yes, yes.
And
And it's
now we're
wonderful because both of us we really have earned every inch we've gotten
what
on
a
our
journey, huh?
on our own. Absolutely. So Tarina is the most beautiful human being. And she saw the video that I did most recently with Kara Witkowski.
Mhm.
And it was really, really hard for me. I'm going to be honest. I'm really good at life coaching. I'm not good at trauma work. And so I was supposed to be on with Madison. Madison would have been more of that buffer for me. But Tarina has turned lemons into lemonade. And what she called me immediately after she saw it, and she said, Carmen, this is the best teaching moment. We can literally, what you did was bear witness, and what you're doing with your platform is allowing for people to see. Why do I think it's important? Why do I have it on my platform? Because I believe it is the key to understanding everything that is going on globally right now. And if we don't all see it, then we're going to continue in this spiral. It's literally a downward spiral for everyone. And so Tarina called, and she kind of put names. She put clinical names to all of the experiences I was having, and
Mhm.
then she put names to the things that Kara was having. Tons of teaching moments. Kara is young and amazing and a true champion for all that she's doing, and she's up against a huge system. And so Tarina, why don't you share with everybody what you said to me when you called me?
So what I thought was so great about that is um, this is exactly the moment that we all have to rise to. And what you and Kara did is you gave us a model to watch how this affects real human beings. That's what everybody keeps talking about is when all this stuff starts coming out, people can't handle it. And so therefore you shouldn't bring it out, right? We can't bring this out because it's too disturbing and people can't handle it. So, and everybody is also saying, but that's what perpetuates it, which is true. So that which stays hidden continues.
Mhm.
That which stays hidden continues. And secrets make us sick. Secrets harm people. So, how do we handle this moment where we have to look, we have to see, and we have to know? And it's also really going to rattle us, but it's positive if it rattles you, because that means that you're a true human being. You're a true healthy human that has feelings, compassion, that your equipment works. Because our original factory setting of being a mammal, mammals have a biological drive to have empathy, to care, to nurture, to bond. We have an automatic sense of caring for others. So even other species, right? A human being walks by a kitten, and if we don't see a mommy cat, we're going to stop, right? And our
Right.
instincts are to say, wait, where's the mama, right? And just care for things that are young and innocent and vulnerable and that still need care. And so when things go wrong, the natural feelings that come up are healthy. So I want everybody to know that the shock and awe of this is a healthy response. It's a healthy response that you're already designed to do, and it isn't going to hurt you. So it was such a wonderful experience to see you be authentically human, and you're also really healthy. So the misunderstanding is that unless you're strong and healthy, if you're strong and healthy, you're not going to get rattled by this. You're not going to have tears come up. You're not going to get overwhelmed. And that's not factually true. So what's a healthy person will get rattled and really challenged on a physical level, handling hearing about torture, crimes against children, that is supposed to rattle us because the sheer emotional intensity of it gets our attention. And that is energy. And emotions are energy plus motion. So the energy of emotions, it's a part of our original health, and it's a part of our original ability to tune in. And when something really shakes us, it gets our attention so that we take action, so that we mobilize, and so that we're so disturbed that we get up and do something about it. So this is all just perfectly divine. So your reaction was just perfectly healthy, and you didn't know it maybe or feel it, but I was like, oh, there's a model of a healthy human. And so if anyone hears some of these stories and you get upset and you feel like you can't breathe for a moment, you hold on, because that tells you how bad the situation is. On a scale from 1 to 10, the level of distress, if it's a 9 or a 10, that means it's a very significant emergency that we have to handle. And it means it can't wait. It means take action now. So the intensity of the emotions doesn't mean you're weak or you can't handle it. That's a misunderstanding. So when you have that intensity where you feel like you can barely hang on, you're fine. You're getting data about the environment. You're getting information about the level of disturbance, the level of harm. So that was accurate, right? Because it was probably felt like a 9, right?
Oh, I mean, it was everything I could handle, because you just know that this little girl is still in harm's way.
Yes. And the mom is still in battle.
Trauma.
Okay. So trauma, when you're still in battle, which she isn't out of danger yet. So she is still a mom running around on the battlefield. So she's in fight, flight, freeze because she still has a child in danger. Okay. And so the way that trauma works is, you see how activated and energetic, and she was in that place of like, it's very important. Yes. And sometimes people say, well, how come she wasn't more emotional? How come she didn't cry when she was talking about difficult things? Because you can't do that when you're in battle. So her adrenaline's running. And when someone's trying to tell us the story, that's like if there's a car accident and you're either in the car or you're right there on the scene, you're going to do that same kind of storytelling, because you know that it's an emergency. You have to have urgency, but you also have to stay with it. You can't get upset yet, and you can't feel it yet, because people are still in danger. And you can do that once you're safe and out of critical emergency. And she's not yet. You are, and you're the witness. And witnesses are supposed to have that reaction.
Right.
And when you're in danger, you can't feel your feelings and be in danger at the same time. That isn't how your equipment's set up. So for everybody to be mindful that when someone is telling us a story, if they're still in danger, that's exactly what they're going to look like.
Yeah.
And when you're bearing witness, you are not doing something passive. When you're bearing witness, it is just as important as being a paramedic and yanking somebody out of a car. So sometimes bearing witness, people will feel like they're not doing anything. Well, what is the point of hearing that? What's the point of looking at that? What is the point of me being here and sort of vicariously experiencing this? Because what can I do about it? I can't run into a burning building and grab a kid. The reason it's so important to have witnesses is because if people can see it, hear it, and then be the witness to then tell others what happened, then it counts as really being true.
Right.
Because that's the first thing, if you watch us as a species, someone tells a story or someone sees something shocking, and they might turn to the next person and say, did you see that?
Yeah. Even a good
Did you see that?
It doesn't have to be traumatic.
Right. Just anything that's
so
like
amazing,
shocking, unusual, because we go, did anybody else see that? Did anybody else hear that? Because the way that our consciousness works is if someone saw it, then it's real.
Right.
Okay. So if someone else saw it, I'm not crazy. If someone else saw it, it must be real. I didn't imagine it. Okay. So
Right.
bearing witness is it's of utmost importance. Bearing witness is a very big verb. If you look up watching, that's a verb. If you look up witnessing, it's a verb. You're not being passive when you are bearing witness. You're being an active participant in changing that which you are observing. So there is a principle called the Hawthorne effect, and everybody can do their own research, what we like to say, right? You can also Google or look up, use another search engine. I use DuckDuckGo, as a matter of fact, but do some research on the observer effect. The observer effect is something that researchers learned about long ago when we started doing the scientific method. And what they found is that if a researcher is observing something, they change it by the nature of observing it. So think about it. If somebody is standing there watching you, it changes your behavior. If someone is around to see it, we act and behave differently than if no one is there to see it. So for crimes to happen, it's a lot better for the criminal if no one saw it. Mm-hmm. If there weren't witnesses, then they might be able to convince themselves or others that it didn't really happen. There is nothing more important than witnessing, having lots of witnesses, having lots of people that are in the know, that know and feel and will bear witness and rally behind believing and supporting what somebody is saying. And that is the only way that we could ever hope to change it. And it's the only thing that changes and stops child abuse. So when we're talking about child abuse, I
do want to kind of clarify before we got there. This isn't just about Kara. This is about any person who's in an abusive situation, who is being abused by a system, a person, whatever it is. And so Kara was the catalyst for this conversation. Yeah. But we're taking now people from Terrina's past and from textbooks and just stories that she's experienced, and they're applicable across the board. So we're not picking on anyone.
No.
And also, a lot of people, before you go into the abuse thing, I want to stay in the bearing witness. Yeah. There were several comments about not being able to sleep that night. Yes. And I wanted to ask you about that, because when you mentioned about trauma, I was like, oh, I once saw a woman's car flip over in Colorado several times and then spin. And I mean, I was jacked up that whole day, whole night. And that wasn't even, she was fine.
But you might say, why did my body do that? How come my body had all that adrenaline and I wasn't in the car? And I've never been in a car and had that happen. So it's not like it's reminding me of something that I've never had that happen, but I observed it. Mm-hmm. And then my body did all this stuff and it lasted hours. Mm-hmm. What is that? Here's what that is. This is auto engineering from the creator. The creator designed us with lots of autopilot programs so that everything stays safe, well, and life continues. So I sort of like the fact that the creator didn't leave it up to us to figure all that out, because it might not have gone so well. So there's that response that you had means that just in case that person didn't survive, if anyone saw that, then the hope is that someone says, oh my gosh. And then you have to have that response, like on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 is like you either have a nervous breakdown or you die from like it's too much. So like a 9 is like where you feel like you can barely just handle it, right? So the reason that you're going to get that physiological 8-9, where it's really, really disturbing. And 8 is like probably what you experienced because it lasted. It was really, really disturbing. And then it was hours. It's supposed to disturb your sleep, because what if that person didn't survive? Someone that saw it needs to be that disturbed so that we come up with a forensic investigation of what caused that crash, and especially if the person died. What could we do as a species to prevent that from happening again? How could we prevent catastrophe? So unless you get that level of disturbance, you're not going to mobilize. And we as a group aren't going to mobilize to create airbags. We're not going to create safety laws. You know, we wouldn't know that it's important to create some kind of a way for us to not have cars flip and roll over and kill people. Right. Because what motivated us to go to great lengths to spend lots of money and lots of time for car safety, and we've done pretty good. Right. There's a lot of improvement since we were kids about you could get in a decent accident and really not be very hurt. Your car is really hurt, but the people survive. So unless people had that response and that level of physiological disturbance, we probably wouldn't have activated around creating car safety, car seats for babies. The reason we created car seats for babies is because it radically disturbed someone to see a baby go flying and go through a windshield or be permanently maimed or decapitated. Because if you talk to first responders, they see things on our behalf that I would say, I'm a trauma therapist and I don't want to see that stuff. And I work with first responders, and I always thank them from the bottom of my heart for going out to those accidents and seeing that for me. Because the fact is that's a burden. Mm-hmm. They do it for all of us. It's a lot. And I don't feel like I could ever repay them for doing that, but someone has to do it, or we don't have safety laws. And we're all in danger if a small group of us don't go and see that, because then we're gonna listen to them when they tell us, and if they're a credible source and our context clues say that they're not making this up, we can validate and corroborate that's probably true. We have all these first responders saying that. Then we go, okay, and we don't have to go see it ourselves, but someone does, and we have to have more than one person. Or we're not going to spend millions of dollars coming up with car safety seats, right? So,
well, and that gets back to the petition, which I did want to make sure I did not forget this. If you go to when I had the last chat with Kara, the only chat with Kara, which was, I think, 2 videos ago, it is in the description box. I would love to challenge anyone that sees this video. You guys are the kind of people that are like Terrina and I, and we want to do stuff.
What can I do?
We want to change. We don't want anyone to ever be in Kara's situation again. So we're going to cover a lot of different things. But if each one of you that watches this were just to find 12 people to sign it and ask them to find 12 people, then we have so many more people. 12 people, I mean, how hard is that? But that's that. If you can't sleep at night, then that's your body telling you that you want to do something about it. So, okay.
That's you coming into alignment with what is truly an emergency, truly important. And then you're going to stay with that little sense, especially when you're connected to your intuition. You're going to have this until you do that, until you go, all right, let me email my friends and ask them. Because of what a petition does. Well, how does a petition help? It says, here's how many people are watching this.
Yeah. They're bearing
This is how many people are watching you, judge. This is how many people are watching you, court process. And we're watching you. And that's the observer effect. When people watch something, observe it, they change it. It's totally true. And you can really, really spend just a few minutes, spend 20 minutes or an hour looking up the observer effect, just so you can really get the gravity of it. But there's lots of experiments that have been done, even in quantum physics, that say that when something is observed, it's always changed. So the more people that see something wrong, the more likely it is that all of that changes. So it's incredibly important, and it does a lot.
Yes. And that's where my heart is my heart is to convert the pain into something that changes the world, because
That's
otherwise
it.
people that die in vain, and it's wrong. And so thank you. And I would just want to brag about you as a friend, because here's somebody who's using all of her schooling and all of her nerdiness
Yep.
for good. And she has a lot. Well, we talked for about an hour and a half when you called. And here's the thing: she saw me, and she was calling as a friend, but she was also calling because she was activated and she wants to do something. And it's exactly what we're trying to do here, is
Ding, ding, ding.
to use the whole thing as a teaching moment.
But
So
that just gave me chill bumps.
yay.
Okay. Because this is the magic. This is us being human beings. Human beings are incredibly powerful. Human beings are capable of making miracles happen, coming into alignment with all that created us for this moment and rising to the moment. I was stirred because I love you. And it was hard for me to watch you struggle. And that's what friends do. That's why friends and relationships are so important, because see, without a relationship and a connection with you, maybe I wouldn't have been as stirred. But
Right.
because I am connected and I do care, I wanted to give you that support and make sure you're okay.
I was okay.
And you did. You shifted, you rallied, because you have a lot of support, right?
Yeah, well, and you're one of them. And it was so beautiful because we both like immediately like, let's get this out as fast as we can, because we had a list of all of the teaching moments from that one that also reminded you of many, many, many other cases. So the reason that it's frustrating is there's a lot of stuff that we should know that we don't know,
Yeah.
just as citizens, to deal with what's being unveiled, because we've only just begun.
But these are things that I know from a mental health field, and I know from the inside of people report child abuse to me, people report domestic violence to me, and I'm supposed to be a part of the system that's the safety net. And so as I do everything in my ability and everything to the limit of my training and the scope of my position, and it still doesn't work because the other steps fail, I need help as a mental health professional and as a therapist. When I am a mandatory reporter and I need to have help to save a spouse, it's not always the woman as the victim and the male as the aggressor. It can go either way. And so whoever is in danger, and then also when there's children involved,
Oh yeah.
I need everyone that's out there doing all of their other, jobs that I hope that they're doing well too. We have to support each other, right? So our veterans need our support as citizens when they're having trouble with whatever. We need to know, because how does it help? Well, because the more people that know and observe, the more likely it is that we change it. It's going to always be true. You can look at the observer effect in all areas of science. You can look at it in psychology, in quantum physics, in any kind of mechanical sciences. So it's a true dynamic of our reality at the physical level. So it's a very powerful thing that's truly measurable. So
Yes.
it is profoundly important. And I just want everyone to have that awareness that when you observe something, you watch it, you're the witness, you are actually doing something. And the more that you then share it with others, because if you share something with me because I'm your friend and I've known you more than 25 years, it's like, it's really credible to me because I know the context of you as a human. I know the level of personal integrity that you happen to have, which you've always had since I've known you. And it resonates in my body when you speak, but I know that since I also know you, like, I know that that's truly a big deal to you. I also know that you can nerd out and do tons of research, and that you have a capacity to like really be a good researcher, and you talk to lots of people and you check your facts. And so like, if you tell me something, it's because of the body of the context, then it has a certain weight with me because of my relationship with you, right? So what we want people to take from here is, just like we're having with each other, they have people in their life that trust their opinion, that have experience with them.
Right.
So it has power when you want to do your due diligence to kind of verify. You don't just pass things on recklessly and carelessly. You really be thoughtful and mindful, and the best that we can do is to, what does our body say? Pray about it. Like, what does your spirit say about it? And then if you're rattled at a high level, that's sort of how we get the nod that we should share it.
Yes.
And then we have a system.
Right.
We have a system that is strong when the more people that are allied together around a common cause, the more powerful the intervention is.
Hence the petition and the GoFundMe's and stuff like that.
It actually does something.
And so one of the things that we talked about was how oftentimes women will tolerate abuse from a partner, assuming that it will only happen to them and not to their children. Could you speak on that, please?
This is such a big one. Okay, so I want you to think about a child. When you're a child, your brain has only the experience of a child. So let's say you're 10. You only have 10 years of life experience, right? And you only have the experience of being a small person that knows you don't know everything. And you're with a big person all day long that says, don't do that. What are you doing? Hey, come back here. And constantly herding you around. Don't walk out in the middle of the street. So the whole first context of the first part of your life is, I don't know anything. I'm a little person. And the big people are always keeping me safe, and they know what they're doing. They've been here a lot longer, which is true. So all the grownups are constantly the kind of owners of what you should do and should not do. And you're constantly in the state of like, well, I don't know. I'm just a kid. And even if you think you know something, a lot of adults will say, well, what do you know? You're just a kid. So you're constantly being overridden and out schooled, right? So you don't have the authority. You also don't have power. And that's childhood. So now I'm abused as a child by an adult. If you're abused by someone in your family, and it doesn't matter what kind of abuse, it could be psychological, where they go after like who you think you are, right? That's the psyche, through your self-identity. Like they just tell you that you're stupid all the time. That's psychological abuse. They could hit you. That's physical abuse. They could just scream and yell at the other adults in the house, and that's vicarious abuse because there's chaos. Yeah, and actually in the state of Arizona, it's now listed on the list of what actually qualifies as child abuse, because the research is so compelling that if mom and dad, or just whoever the two adults are in the house, when they're just fighting with each other and they're not even aware, and the child isn't being yelled at, the intensity of the danger, because as a child you are dependent on them for your survival. So if they kill each other, you're gonna starve to death and be an orphan, right? It's just like caveman brain, right? So what happens is, when you're a kid and you're abused, most of the time the adult is going to convince you that it's your fault. So I wouldn't have hit you and beat you until you had a black eye if you weren't a bad kid. Well, so you just take that in, because what do you know? They're probably right. And then when they are explosive or they sexually abuse you, then they say, you better not tell anyone, or, you're going to ruin the family.
Yep.
If you tell anyone that I sexually abused you, I'm going to go to jail, and the whole family's going to starve to death, and it will be your fault.
Yep.
Okay. So that is always the case that locks this in. Now you're a kid, so you just make your best effort to survive it. And actually, as a kid, it is technically true. You can't do anything about it. But you also can't internally protect yourself from feeling like it's your fault. There's something about you that made it happen, because sometimes they overtly tell you that. And if they don't, you just guess it. Okay. So now that goes in your hard drive. The reason that I was abused is there's something wrong with me as a kid. And I can tell you from lots of years as a therapist, when someone is sexually abused in the family, the most common thing that I hear is they will say, I'm pretty sure I was the only child that was abused. Now, they might have 4 or 5 siblings, but they're very certain that if it's the father or an uncle or whoever it is, that no other child was abused, only me. No, they didn't abuse my brother and sister, only me. Okay. So what I hear, and other therapists, right? When we really do our deep dive, we find that that's not true. So every sibling in the family was abused. They all think they were the only one abused. Okay, so that is just the nature of how that works, because the adult is now an adult. The whole time they're abusing children, they've been in the world and they know it's a criminal offense.
Right.
And they know that if anything gets out, they're in big trouble. So they go to great lengths to get away with it. Okay, and they have a little plan, they have a strategy, they do a lot of grooming, and a lot of the time they prep in a 360 spiral to protect that, because of course every criminal wants to do the crime and not get caught.
Right.
So now you grow up and this was never challenged, so there was no Microsoft updates. Okay. So your hard drive is still based on old data that's never been updated. And you say, well, now I'm a grown up, so I don't ever have to worry about being abused because now I'm a big person. And at some level that does help. And I'm going to make sure that I'm never on the bottom anymore.
Right.
So that's why you'll see somebody that's an adult that's over functioning and that tries to be the one up, even if it's not in an unhealthy way. They're just like, here, let me do that. Let me help you. Let me do that. Let me take care of that. And they're like, go, 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 do. And they want to make sure that they do everything right and well and excellent, so that nobody ever puts them into this mindset again, right? So I have to be the best, I have to be the smartest, I have to be the most capable. And that is a way to protect yourself from ever being abused again. It makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
So the unconscious database, your childhood trauma goes into storage. By the time you're like 21, it goes down really deep in your hard drive that goes unconscious. It's not in your conscious awareness. You have to do that so you can kind of go on with normal life.
Right.
That helps you survive it. And you have to kind of get up and get your life going so that you're never vulnerable again, because you do need to be able to take care of your survival so that you're never in that again. So that's like all really healthy stuff to do. And at some point, you're supposed to kind of get stable and safe enough that you can then go back and do the repair work, because you weren't unharmed by it. And that's another myth. Oh, right. It was fine. It was a long time ago. You know, that was then, this is now. That's what most people do.
Right.
And then you have children. So now you are out of awareness of this entire experience because it's in storage and you don't have a passcode. So you have a blind spot. And you have a false sense of security that the reason it happened was just unique to me. And so a lot of people will have their children around the person in their family that abused them as a kid. They do it all the time because their hard drive said, no, that was just me. There was something about me that made that happen. And they're just completely solid on that.
Yeah, so you're dead on that, because I've seen so many videos, and I have a lady that from the UK that her story is crazy. Her dad, and she really did kind of, you know, finally come to the realization that her children could be in danger. Like, she couldn't have her dad around her kids.
That's how this unconscious conscious works. And I really want everyone to really truly hear that you have to kind of respect the system, because it's already auto-programmed to compartmentalize, not so that you're victimized in the future, but because you have to kind of go on with normal life. and you kind of can't trust the people around you to help you. So you have to wait, tuck it away until you are old enough to create your own survival and get away from those people. And then we're supposed to go back and do the repair work. But if you don't, then what happens is you have this vulnerability, and then you repeat it again, and it's called repetition compulsion.
Yep.
And that is, it's divinely inspired. So we can't say that it's wrong. It's the way that we heal. It's the way that now that we're an adult, we have a credit card, we have a way to get help, we have a car, we can drive ourselves, and we can have maybe a different experience. Then in the best case scenario, we're put in that situation again so that our adult self can handle it different. And our adult self goes, what? No.
Yeah.
And we then have to have help, because even an adult, you can't stop that kind of stuff without support. So you have to have other adult support, which is what the child should have had and didn't. And then you get an opportunity for a redo.
Yes.
And when you do that redo and you go back and realize that you were a child that could not have stopped a big person from doing that.
Right.
It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault because you didn't say no. That's not how it works. And that you were literally like without help and you couldn't have stopped it and you didn't cause it.
Right.
Because now as an adult, when adults look back, we don't ever say, oh, the 10-year-old made that happen.
Right.
We just don't do that with life experience. We go, no, that's the grown-up's fault.
Right. We
don't say the 6-year-old made a perfectly normal adult just snap and abuse them. No.
Right.
Okay. So that's how we alchemize it. That's how we transform it. And that's how the world changes, because to the extent that one person heals one issue, all of humanity moves forward.
Amen.
And it's real stuff.
Yeah.
And
I have a question.
That closes the gate forever.
Yeah. The person, so the original question, because I don't want to lose it, is the person who is being abused, this person that you're describing that grew up the way they did, also has that same disconnect with their own children, probably will be fine. It's just me.
That's it. There's layers of this, right? Because if you survived it and didn't die, you take on the misunderstanding that you weren't harmed.
Right.
And that is absolutely not factually true. So we have brain scans that show that trauma and child abuse of any flavor changes the physical structure of the brain. It alters it just like a burn alters your skin. If you touch your arm with a curling iron, it alters the skin and leaves a scar. Now, you might not die from it, but depends on how deep the burn is, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so it does alter the function. And as you are growing up as a child, it alters the way that your brain processes information and also processes relationship content.
Right.
So your map now says, well, if I'm betrayed, if someone that I care about and I count on for my very survival lies, cheats, and steals from me and harms me, I can survive it. That doesn't mean you should have that experience again.
Right.
Okay. Because there's lots of things we survive that we shouldn't be exposed to again. All kinds of things, right? Yeah. You can lose a limb and you can still live your life very well.
Right.
But we want to take steps to not lose a limb, right?
Absolutely.
And so, you do have an alteration. It stops your otherwise healthy development. But what it sets up is this pattern that it's your relationship survival map. And it's also your love map if you were harmed and betrayed by a parent. So your significant caregivers, usually a mom and a dad, right? Or, whatever two parents, or even if it's one parent, then you just have one of those, but most of us have 2 of those little neural networks. And that is our comfort zone. That's our baseline for normal. So we're going to go out and create that like a moth to a flame, because that's our earliest experience. That's our original map that's unconscious. So when you're abused as a child, your tendency is to then go out, and you wouldn't see it consciously, because consciously you wouldn't choose that.
Right.
And just listen to how many of us say, okay, I know that I definitely don't want this and this, and I didn't like this about, and I'm definitely not going to do that. And then to our best efforts and our best intentions into a relationship or our first marriage, sometimes, most of the time, you see the sneaky patterns again. So if you had a betrayal in your primary attachment figures, you're likely to marry or get into a partnered relationship with someone who activates that again. So they're going to replay the pattern.
Yes.
And again, that is what is designed to happen, because you couldn't actually fix it when you're a kid, because kids can't do that.
Right.
So it goes dormant and it says, but this needs to be healed.
Right.
So then you wait till you're grown up so that you have the capacity. You also have autonomy and sovereignty, hopefully. And you now have a shot at actually alchemizing that and choosing, because a kid doesn't have a choice. They have no power, money, or influence, but an adult is supposed to. Adult is supposed to, and is also legally supported in, you are allowed to leave a relationship. A child really can't leave that parent bond.
Right.
And the law will run circles around anybody that tries to rupture that, right? So it's really tough to get out of that. Even in cases of overt abuse, we don't take kids away from parents. And so it's a very, very high bar. So the truth is, everybody shoves you back into the environment that you're trying to tell people isn't good. And that is what almost every community and every society, and that's how our legal system is they put the kid right back in danger. Right. So as a kid, you kind of are used to, nobody listens to you, nobody helps you, everybody tells you it's not that bad. Well, your parents love you, it's fine. And it isn't fine.
Right.
So you set it up again. So when you're a child, you are very, very highly likely. In fact, it almost always happens unless you have already fixed it. Right. Which almost no one kind of gets
People
to yet.
don't. And here's the thing. I really would like your opinion on that. My opinion is, and I've even told my own kids this, please go do the work before you get married. Please.
Well, I have some hilarious conversations with my children.
Yeah, regardless of how great your parents are or how horrible they are, it doesn't even matter, because it's how a child interprets it.
That is right.
Kids record everything.
And they do, and I hate that.
That's not what I meant. Like that, that was not my intention or whatever. But there's a lot of stuff to clear based on their interpretation, even if it's not
100% true.
It's not real in the parents' eyes. And to give people, the young people, space to do this, and to encourage them to do it, regardless of how healthy you think they are. 100% of the people, right? Should
yeah. Because you're going to have some kind of, we call it like in interpersonal neurobiology. So if we get all nerdy, geeky, sciencey, the science of this says there's neural pathways that are created in the brain. And that's happening the whole time that the child is developing, going through the stages of development, early infancy, early childhood, adolescence, to young adult, to adult. Okay. And the brain is organically a different thing, physiologically different, all those stages. So it just based on the age of the child, it's going to sit different. Right. So if I have kids that are 6 and 10 and 12, and one thing happens in my kitchen,
right,
the brain of all my children are going to absorb it and integrate it different just because of their age. Yes. Because their brains are very different. My 12-year-old has an entire different brainwave that my 8-year-old doesn't even have yet.
Right.
So it
Well, and
can't
the
possibly get
6-year-old
stored the
is still
same.
only in theta wave state, so they're only taking in information. They're not actually
They
creating
can't discern it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that is why the childhood stuff is so powerful. So we just need to like, just, kind of radical acceptance. Everyone has this. There's degrees. Just
Right.
like if we say curly hair, well, there's wavy and then there's
Right.
super curly. It's
Yeah.
all curly hair.
Right.
So everyone leaves their childhood with some little list.
Yeah.
Everyone has it. It's impossible for you to not have something, and that's called
Yeah.
normal.
And so the way that you know you have something is things start happening in your life. And when things start going really into a downward spiral, you really need to stop and look at what's going on in your life. It's so awesome. You had so many great recommendations. Another thing that came up that I think is essential that everyone here hears was your take on anonymity while going through an actual dangerous situation. Obviously, we're not dogpiling on anybody for anything that
No,
they
but it's
have done in the
really, this is
past.
the way
We're trying to help people going forward to reform and give tools to people so that they do things correctly, because Terrina's seen a lot of her clients get on Facebook groups or different things, but they use their real name and they're in the middle of it, and the person will actually call their ex-husband or the person involved, like it's because they're mad at them. It's like, okay, you just made the whole thing worse. So it's
and there's degrees. Okay, there's mild, moderate, and severe. Okay, so the mild kind of stuff that everyone says, yeah, but it's the normal amount of dysfunctional stuff everyone has. That kind of stuff truly is sort of just annoying, a pain, but it's not dangerous.
Right.
Okay, it's the normal amount of things that people do and say that's hurtful. They shouldn't have said it.
Right.
But it doesn't wipe us out. It's not against the law.
Right.
It doesn't like alter us, and it doesn't cost a ton of money to fix it. It's the normal kind of stuff. Okay, moderate abuse, moderate problems, moderate interpersonal difficulties. That is right on the line. And a lot of that is truly damaging, truly harmful, really destructive. That is actually significant. And that you have to really pay attention to, because that can stop your growth. It can stunt your children's development, and it can also harm your health. That will take you down. So moderate amounts of anything that is mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, like it affects your ability to want to live and get up every day, that is significant, and you have to intervene. And usually that isn't something you're just going to figure out yourself. This is where you have to have fellowship. You have to have help, and you want to not feel like you're a big baby, that you reach out for help. That is how mammals do life. Yeah. Mammals live in community. Mammals naturally want to help. And so for us to feel healthy as a mammal to help, someone needs to have help. And we're supposed to do both sides. We're supposed to give and receive. We're supposed to need and give. And that is a healthy ecosystem for mammals. Okay, so most of us are going to fall into that mild, moderate, and just go back and forth. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff that Kara shared, and some things that come to me as a therapist are in the severe, and they're way beyond the scope, right, of anything that anyone would even be prepared to handle or could pull it off. Right. And your friends and your family and your pastor, they can't help you with this. They can help you with mild and moderate. It works out great. It's handled. That is how that goes. But when you get into the severe pathology, you have somebody that is, you love them, but they have a severe mental illness. You love them, but they're violently abusive. They're violent. They destruct property. They hit you and leave a mark. They assault you in any way, terrorize you. Right. That is next level. And your friends and family can't help you with that. And we are supposed to have a system of specialists professionally, just like if there's a fire in our house, if it's like a small one, we're supposed to have a little, fire extinguisher, and we're supposed to have basic skills to put a small fire out.
That's good. I like that.
But if it's a big one and it's like something serious, we don't have the equipment, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the ability when we call the fire department. And they do know that. And then we're supposed to do it that way. I want people to know that when we're talking about mental illness and abuse and violence, I don't think people know.
Right.
I don't think we have a good ecosystem where we're trained.
Right.
Everybody knows, like, there's a certain level of danger that you call the police because it's over your pay grade. I just don't think people know right now when somebody has a severe mental illness or they are severely addicted to a substance so that they are dangerous to themselves and others.
And to the family, yeah.
You do not handle that yourself. You call for emergency backup and you call the right people.
Yes.
And then if they fail you, which it shouldn't, but if they do, you keep going. And it's that dangerous, and you can't love somebody out of that. That is a mistake we make as a group. We try to love somebody and just keep helping them, and we're going to change them. That is a really a big problem that I think that we have to really get better at doing. And as women, supporting women tend to be the ones that get into that dynamic the most. Is I can just do better tomorrow, and I can have the house cleaner, and I can have the kids quieter, and I can just be a better wife, and he'll be okay, and he won't be depressed and moody and grumpy and irritable.
Well, then
and he
there's
won't drink.
Women on the other side, the mothers that, even though the mother might not be living with them or whatever, the mother's enabling the son to continue to do these things, which is also really, really common.
And that is where somebody is out of their scope.
Yeah.
And so what you look for, so that you'll know, so you're not guessing, there's 3 areas. So you look at a person, and it can be a child and or an adult. There's 3 things. Is that person able to function at school? So they're doing kind of relatively okay at school, or their job, if they're an adult. Do they do okay? Are they able to stay with it and support themselves? And they can function financially, and they can kind of take care of their functional, financial, brick and mortar, go to work life as an adult. Okay. Right. And then as a kid, are they okay in school, and they can go to the next grade level, and they're kind of successful, and they don't have tons of problems in school.
Right.
Okay. The next one is their relationships. We are mammals. If we're healthy and well, we kind of have relationships. So your children have a few little friends at school. They get along with other kids. You're not getting called all the time because there's problems with other kids. And then an adult doesn't constantly have problems in their work environment. They're not always in a fight with some other employee. They're not constantly having to quit their job because they can't get along with their boss. So it's real simple to just look at that second one, right? Is that kind of about right? Not perfect, but just functional. Does it work so that you don't get kicked out of school and you're not constantly in turmoil, or not? So those are the 2. The third one is your health. Okay. So relationships, job, occupation, or school, and then your health. So if you have a health issue where you can't sleep, you either sleep too much or too little, you either don't eat at all, or you overeat such that it impairs your function, and you have some other kind of like metabolic physical level. So like a substance addiction counts as that, because it's going to dysregulate your health.
Okay.
And you get, you can, have car accidents. Like, if you have any kind of like physical thing where your emotions are out of control, because that causes physical impairment. So if you're so emotionally upset that you can't sleep, you can't eat. So If somebody has physical health issues, then that's the third one. So if you want to try to figure out, is this about the normal amount of dysfunctional stuff? Okay. So if you have impairment in one area, that's what I would call the normal amount of stuff people have.
Right.
You're normal. You can handle that with your friends, your family, your pastor. Like that's normal life. That's the normal challenges in life that we're supposed to have that help us build resilience. And then we're supposed to reach out. And that is super healthy. I call that positive stress, because you're supposed to have some decent challenges. You're supposed to have stress so that you can stay healthy. You don't want to try to never have problems. That's not normal.
Right.
And you won't be healthy. You have to kind of keep stretching to be healthy. So one area of impairment, you're good.
Right.
If you are at 2 areas of impairment, you have a serious situation that you have to go for help.
Yeah.
You have to go for help. You have to have a decent amount of support, and you have to stay with it until you only have 1 area of impairment. And now you're a normal person with problems again.
Welcome to the rest of us.
Yeah, and that's what we call normal. So if you have 3, you are in danger.
Right.
If you are with a person who is impaired in all 3 areas, that is an emergency. That isn't going to stop at you. If you're a mom and have children, your children are in imminent danger.
Yes. Amen. Listen to this woman. And so bring that back around to what we were talking about with social media, the different levels of unhealthy and what suggestions you have for social media.
When you have 2 areas, you totally have to be on point, because it could go to 3. And now you could have permanent damage or death. That's what 3 means. 3 means somebody's life could be at risk, and we might not be able to fix them. Okay. So at 2, you have to be really on point. You have to really put some fences around, and you could be at risk of losing your children, because if you're talking about mother, father, shared custody, and one person is very impaired, they're not well enough to be rational or logical. So they will do things that you're not going to think of. You have to be smart and on point. You have to be more sharp and double check things, consult with others at 2 levels of impairment, because the stakes are high and mistakes are made. Because therapists can make mistakes, police officers can make mistakes, courts can make mistakes. You can just get out lawyered, and the wrong thing happens, and a child is in danger. So you don't get online. You don't start posting things that sort of like, say something about your spouse. You know how people do it.
They have like little
poems or memes. And everybody reading it goes, oh, you're pissed at your spouse.
Or they must have just broke up.
And everybody knows that. So realize that you are making yourself vulnerable, but you're also, if you have children, you're risking your ability to be a custodian of your children, and you could put them in harm's way. Because especially when you have somebody that isn't well, the biggest trigger for a person that's not well is attachment. So when they get wind that you might leave, or they might not live with their children anymore, that's when people get more dangerous. And that's caveman stuff.
Right.
And that is dangerous. So you do not play around with attachment stuff. That's where people lose their mind and act irrationally. So you have to have a true respect for attachment breaches. They're the most dangerous. They're the most important to get right. And you need to zip it. You have to really stop talking to your acquaintances, your neighbors. You have to really limit who you talk to, because it can always be spun by a desperate partner. And the more desperate they are and the more ill they are, the greater lengths they will go to exploit
Yes.
those little moments.
It's just like mainstream media taking advantage of, situations and twisting or spinning, or a really good PR team going out there and spinning something. And let me tell you, they can do it. So,
They can
so
do
here's
it.
the thing though, there's a lot of really good support groups, and sometimes that's all somebody needs. So, what do you
So here's
suggest?
what I want the average person to know,
Okay.
that if it is a well-run, safe support group, it doesn't matter what the flavor is. Okay. A mom's group, a women's group, especially if it's a PTSD group or a domestic violence group, anything that is abuse, neglect, there's a victim and a perpetrator, especially that. You do not use your real name. You they if they set the group up right, they should say that in the bylaws. If you don't see that written, it's not set up by a professional or a safe person. And just the average person could set one of these groups up,
Right.
and
But
you could be walking into a den of snakes, because a perpetrator can set up one of those groups to victimize people. Okay, that is real. So people that want to use other people will set up some of these groups, and they have a fresh set of victims all the time. Now, you wouldn't think that, but I'm telling you, as a professional
oh,
that
absolutely.
works with people that have been abused and are perpetrators, that's a real thing. So no real names. And when you're if you do a video one, you don't use your face. You get a little avatar, or you just put up a picture, but you use a pseudonym. So just take another name and you go by Kim or Stella or something else. And that keeps you safe. And that also allows other people to get to know your story, but it protects your privacy and your safety. So that's how all like AA groups, those type of groups that are 12-step groups, they're very aware of that, and they hold to that for good reason, because bad things happened.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
when they didn't do that in the beginning, people sent spies in there to use in court against them to take their kids away.
Right. Oh, it's
So
horrible.
and
Horrible.
so now that things are online, don't put your face out there, because they can record that. They can splice it and tape it and misrepresent.
Right.
And it's just a safety thing. And especially with children, it's not safe. And I know that
It puts you in a
sometimes,
position where you can look insane or unstable, and the last thing you need to do is look insane or unstable. And so then the question becomes, okay, now I can get support because I have this other avatar and a different name, and I'm really, it's helping me, because even though the stories are sad or whatever, it's good to know other people have tripped over the same thing I've tripped over.
it's
But
very, very helpful, because now we're back to being a mammal. This
yeah.
is like so supportive biologically for us as mammals. Sometimes we can't get in the car and drive somewhere, but it's necessary for our health and wellness for us to meet and bond and be in fellowship and relationship. We actually can't do well without relationships. So we heal in community. We
And the girls,
heal.
the people are so supportive. But my question was going to be, what, at what point? I mean, because Kara actually needs support, like, because it's gone too far down the road that she had to go public, right? I mean, she didn't have a choice, and
Yes.
and so she is doing the right thing now at this point, by
But
going public. But she
what I
could
would say
also,
is you do that at a tipping point,
okay,
and you would never make that decision without consulting with professionals.
right.
So if you say, is this the point at which, for me to keep this safe and have the best outcome, I have to go public? I would say that it's a small percentage. Most cases are not going to rise to that occasion, and you're going to make it worse.
Right.
Because if it isn't at that tipping point, then it has an inverse effect. It has a negative effect on you, because you're overdoing it, you're over dramatizing, you're over escalating it, and it ends up causing more loss. So that's why you have to talk to someone with a lot of experience,
Right.
definitely lawyers, but also mental health people that have worked on those types of complex cases, because you also have to take into consideration the harm to the child
During the whole
and
process.
that's where you need someone in my little bubble on mental health, but somebody with the right experience to say, is the safety so much that we can't provide safety any other way, that it's worth exposing
Right.
the details of somebody's life forever?
Right.
Because it really has to be worth it. You have to try every single other avenue
Right.
before you, because that's exploitation.
Right.
That can sometimes really set a child up so that they can't ever be anything other than the story.
Right.
And that's unfair, and it forms your identity in a trap.
In something, in a case like this where it is such a devastating case, would you personally, and I know this is just your opinion, you're not telling people what to do,
Right.
but would you suggest once you're through the weeds to change names, or to do something that could protect the anonymity going forward? Because I do think
absolutely would, because when we have a lot of data on where that goes, and it's not beneficial. It means that you can't ever really recover, right? Because if you have especially a unique name, but also if your pictures are out there,
right,
and somebody could later connect the dots, then you can't ever truly heal and become another healed person outside of the experience that happened 20 years ago, right? So true healing is gaining the wisdom of a bad experience, but truly surviving so that you are not identified with what happened to you. You're the person that continues to be who you should have been without this thing.
right.
That's true recovery and survival, is that
not
you
just
are
even
completely just
anyone that's gone through an intense. And so it goes back to that mild, moderate, and severe, and how much it is interesting, because people really do. I know, unfortunately, Carla has shared a story where one of her girls from the sex trafficking, when they mainstreamed her, they got her a great job, and she made the mistake of telling people where she worked that she had come out of prostitution, even though it was trafficking. And they all started treating her different at that moment. And so people really need to be careful about that. But
and that's why you consult, because there's people like in my field where we have a lot of data on, like, we put all the little data points together, we kind of come up with almost like a math formula, and we go, okay, with these variables, this probably goes this way, and this probably goes this way. And so that would be like, it isn't that what happened to you is a secret, and we don't want you to have shame about that.
right.
But just in a practical way, a lot of other people don't have the maturity
right.
to understand that. They haven't actually like done their work, and they would be more likely to use that against you in a bad way. So it isn't a secret, but it just isn't a practical wise thing to do in a professional setting. That's TMI.
Right. I agree. 100%.
Okay? You're at work.
I call it don't throw pearls before swine, All right. So then, but then you also have to look at what advice would you give somebody who's young, that's really stuck right now, that doesn't have money? They don't have money, so they can't afford a Terrina Picarello, and they don't have access to professional help. And like in Kara's case, she happened to stumble upon a nest of vipers, like people who were supposed to be the firemen, but instead came and said, oh, your house is on fire. I have a really nice house. What's your phone number?
Exactly. We don't actually help people when their house is on fire. So I don't know why you called us.
Right.
Right. And then for everybody to go, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I want everybody to have a scope of outlying. All the rules are different. It's not going to follow practical intuitive. It's not going to follow common sense. It's an outline.
Right.
And not many things are going to fall there, thankfully. but
Yes.
some do. And then we all have to rally around somebody in that position because everything is upside down. And again, there's not very many things that happen like that. So you
Right.
have to find a specialist. Okay. So sometimes when you're in that moderate, high moderate, you need some of that too. Right. And so most people, I'll speak for mental health. In the mental health field, we have a code of ethics. And part of our code of ethics says that we also have an obligation to be an advocate for people outside of you hire me to help you. I also have an ethical obligation as part of my professional licensing. I'm ethically bound to render help and be an advocate for somebody and a case manager and get them to resources. Good. So if somebody comes in and they present something that they need help and they don't have money to pay, I am still ethically obligated to make sure.
I bet most people that don't have money don't know that.
That is true. So I want everyone to know.
Let's repeat it. So let's say you're a poor girl in Chicago and you're 24 years old. You're up against a severe situation. You realize it. You're smart enough to realize it. And you've gone past the point of worshiping. You finally realize I'm in over my head. She could literally call any reputable suburban therapist and try to get an appointment, or would she tell them up front, or what would be the typical process?
So I am a therapist that I will talk to a lot of therapists. I would say a decent amount of therapists will do a brief phone consultation to see if you're a good fit, because we don't want to waste someone's time. And we want to sort of say, oh, if you're going to come and see me for that, I actually have 2 colleagues that specialize and are better at that. And let me refer you to them. And so we do that to try to just have everybody have a better result, right? So some therapists will offer a 1-hour free consultation. Some will offer a 30-minute phone call free to see if they're an appropriate fit. Okay. So if you go to Psychology Today or you go to find a therapist, there's different little places, and just read through and you'll see some that say this therapist offers a 30-minute phone call at no charge to see what's going on and if they're a good fit. Okay. And you can also just call an office and say, I am in this situation. I don't have insurance. I don't have, money to pay, but I need to talk to someone for them to tell me where I can go for help. Right. And you just be honest and say, I'm not going to be able to hire any of these therapists because I don't have the money, but I need to meet with a therapist to just tell me where do I go? Who should I talk to? And somebody is going to do that. Okay. Right. And so I'm going to throw this out because it's absolutely true. The EMDR community, I'm an EMDR therapist. The EMDR therapists, particularly, we have a little thing because we are trauma therapists and we specialize in the most complicated, complex trauma recovery. And those are people that most of the time it wasn't anything they did that they were harmed in that way. We respond to natural disasters. We respond to something like 9/11. We respond to school shootings. That's what EMDR therapists do. We are kind of at the highest level of acute, complicated things. So we do it from a different place. And we know that sometimes people, when they're not well, they're not working. And
they've already kind of gone down that downward spiral, and your environment matches where you are.
And sometimes also, if you're also injured in an accident like that, you might have been out of work for 6 to 8 months before you really are ready to deal with the traumatic elements of that. Right. So a lot of people don't have money because of just the nature of how that goes.
What's going on?
So we know that. So it is a part of the EMDR community, and it's a part of the EMDR certification is, hey, you understand as an EMDR therapist that this is our thing that we do. And we're asking you as a certified person, and I think most people just do it. actually have to as an EMDR therapist, but it's a part of the EMDR thing.
I
So I
love
don't
it.
know. I don't know any EMDR therapists
That
that
makes
don't.
me so very happy.
So,
And
so what we do is we do a pro bono at percentage. Okay. So I can only do so that we stay healthy.
right,
So we have boundaries around that. So most therapists will have 10 to 30% of their business that they do a sliding scale.
right,
So a sliding scale means your ability to pay, because there's a lot of research that says if you just do it for free, the person doesn't really sort of honor and value and sort of get the same thing out of it as if they invest in it. Right. So,
yeah,
so I have had people that pay me $5.
yeah,
And I've had lots of people that pay me $10, and I just work with them the whole time because that's what they can afford.
right,
But they invest what they can.
right,
And then it's a real similar therapeutic relationship as everyone else,
right,
but it's their ability to pay. And I have 30%, 10 to 30% at any time. That's about all I can do. And I'm not allowed to do any more within the ethical boundary. So they
right,
do give us that guidance and say, now don't be over helping and
right.
don't be that martyr therapist. That it's unhealthy, right?
Right. Well, and
So
that's why it's good to do something like this, because you're getting the information out without speaking one on one. I mean, if people share this with young people who they know are in troubled situations, oftentimes we can watch it and go, I tried to talk to them, they're not listening. It might help. You never know. And if they feel comfortable, but I love that information. That's valuable. Another piece of valuable information that we chatted about was marital rape. And I would love for you to comment on that. Also, I would imagine that the response that Kara got the next day with him crying and, doing all this stuff would be typical of somebody that's scared to death of getting caught, right?
that's it. Because if you are of the ilk to rape your spouse, you are not a person that follows common sense. You're not healthy enough to otherwise truly have that be real. Okay. Right. If you cross that line, it would be very rare. And I would say I've never seen it and I don't see any research on it. Okay. Is that you would truly be sorry.
Right.
Because if you have the capacity for empathy and regret, you wouldn't have had the capacity to rape your spouse when they're screaming. And it just doesn't work like that. So I want people to know that. So
you're saying truly, the capacity isn't there, period. Pay attention to what she's saying. So let's rewind a little bit, because I think it's really important to define marital rape. Because there's a lot of women that don't necessarily want to have sex with their husbands but do consent, and then there's ones that tell their husbands they don't want to but then they still consent, which is different than not telling their husband that you see what I'm saying? There's like this.
Yes.
Okay.
And it is very tricky, even when it's overt marital rape, where it is clearly like you're screaming no, you're saying get off of me, you're fighting the person back. They are purposely like using their weight and their size, and they're aggressively and violently raping you. That's clearly marital rape, right? Okay. But that is still very hard to then go and report. It's very tricky I will say that there's a lot of therapists that don't handle that well. They cause more trauma to the person that's reporting it. So there's that. Okay. But the other ones, when we go mild, moderate, severe, right? This is where we all have to take responsibility, all of us, for this, because it is dangerous if we don't do this right. So there's implied consent, right? Mm-hmm. So we as women can't expect our partners to read our minds. That is not a system. Well, he should have known that I wasn't in the mood, because I clearly gave him the body language and I was clearly slamming the door and not talking. Okay.
No, this is so good. This is so good.
That won't get you there. that means that you're a part of the problem and you participated in that happening. It's sort of like if you're going to drive recklessly in the rain and not use the seatbelts, and you're not going to slow down when it's pouring down rain and you get in an accident, then you're partially like recklessly, you participated in that. That's not just like an accident, right?
Right.
It's still not good that it happened, right? And we're still going to take care of people when bad things happen. But you have to really be mindful to not be a part of making that dangerous. You make it more dangerous when you don't speak up. Because if you have a husband that's a normal guy, and he would not otherwise do that, because who he is as a person, he would just not be that guy.
Right.
And you don't say anything and you're just quiet and you're pouty and he's guessing and he's trying to make up with you and he cannot read your mind. I'll tell you right now, they can't read our mind. So then he just looks at the context clues the best he can. And then he has sex with his wife. Let me tell you how traumatic it is.
And she doesn't fight. And
that's
she doesn't
right.
fight. Yeah.
She just, well, he should have known because I just laid there.
Right.
And I wasn't participating. He should have known. That isn't okay because now you're a part of traumatizing your husband, because when you have somebody that otherwise wouldn't do that, if someone said, I'm not in the mood, I don't want to have sex, and he clearly got the signal and he would never push.
Right.
When you don't give the signals, and because a signal is only a signal when it's received accurately. So if I send you an email, Carmen, but you don't receive it, does it count that I sent it?
Nope.
You didn't get it.
Right.
I sent you an email that's really important and somebody's safety is in limbo, and I didn't make sure you got the email.
Right.
So then
I have a friend that
I can't say that I
was going to say I
did my due diligence, right?
I have a friend that actually freezes up. So she literally, according to her, can't speak up. And so to me, that's something that she needs to really get on board. I think you just froze. Can you hear me, T? Oh, wait. Oh, no.
No, frozen.
Oh, there you are. I can hear you now. Can you hear me? Bummer.
Oops, let me see.
Can you hear me?
It's frozen.
Okay. You know what? I don't know what to do in this situation. This has not ever happened before. I had this happen yesterday, so I think it's something with my internet. I apologize, everybody. What I'm going to do is see if Terrina still has time, if anyone can hear me. And I'm going to restart the whole thing.